Rhetoric of Calaveras, also known as Sugar Skulls by Daniela Aquino. The cultural artifact. The cultural artifact of sugar skulls, or calaveras, are miniature sculptures made in the form of a skeleton skull with sugar. They are painted with bright colors that are associated with the Day of the Dead. The Day of the Dead, or El Día de los Muertos, is on November 1st. The cultural artifact of the calavera is predominantly in the Mexican community. It signifies those who have passed away and the artistry behind Mexican art styles. They are also used as an offering in an ofrenda, which are also known as altars. On the Day of the Dead, people in Mexico use these altars to commemorate their loved ones who have died. These calaveras symbolize death as a celebration instead of a negative. The art and sugar show the beautiful and celebratory idea around death and the Day of the Dead. Indexical/irony. Calaveras are associated with the Day of the Dead and Mexican culture. They also are often seen as a Halloween costume in the American culture. The irony behind calaveras is that they represent death in a positive light instead of the negative, which comes with hardship and sadness. The irony behind these sugar skulls is what they represent, which is the beauty behind death and not the tragedy. Rhetoric behind these calaveras. The artifact in other cultures' perspective represents death or a symbol of death through art. The rhetorical device that applies to this is ethos. The rhetorical device ethos is applied to this artifact through its connection to people's emotions pertaining to their loved ones who have died. The function of the artifact is to make people feel connected to those who died and as an offering to show their gratitude for the lives they lived. The cultural stereotype surrounding the calavera. The stereotype revolving around these calaveras is that they are a Halloween costume. They take it as a Halloween costume because skeletons are associated with the scary aesthetic of the holiday. They're often painted on people when they don't know the meaning behind the art. This is also known as cultural appropriation. This can be very offensive to those who make sugar skulls for their loved ones because they view it as an offering. The final thoughts. For the first question on how I utilized my writing process, I said that I gathered my key points first and then found specific information surrounding that. For an example, I began choosing an artifact, and once I found it, I researched the significance as well as included my own knowledge of the impact it has on the community. Then once I made my presentation, I got it peer-reviewed. Once I got my reviews back, I applied any questions or concerns my peers had in my final draft. For the second on how I would judge how I did, I will judge how I did based on if anyone, including my audience, learned something from this presentation. How I approached creating my draft. I went into making my draft by hitting the main ideas first. I looked at the rubric and covered everything on it. Then once it was all covered, I edited everything so they could flow easily. In what ways was I satisfied with what I created? I was satisfied with the rhetorical devices I managed to incorporate and the colorful slides in my presentation that went along with the Day of the Dead and the calaveras. I was satisfied with what I created was with the information I found pertaining the cultural stereotype. I wish I could have found more specific sources pertaining to this topic. What did I learn about my writing process? I learned that I benefit from following the rubric and working around it, so I know I have everything that is required of me. What feedback would I be looking from you to benefit my writing? I would like to know if I use my rhetorical devices correctly, so in the future I know that I'm using it in the best way possible. There are no further questions for this project. For my works cited, the first source, I used it by helping myself identify the cultural stereotypes revolving around the Day of the Dead in Calaveras. It showed how it's a part of cultural appropriation to paint your face like a skull or make sugar skulls without knowing the meaning and tradition behind it. The second showed sugar skulls and what they represent in Mexican culture and why the skulls are made of sugar. It signified that skulls were made of sugar because of the lack of resources. The third source explained the symbolism behind the calaveras and what they mean in the Mexican community. It helped show that the sugar skulls are seen as an offering to those who have died and are meant to represent the beauty and death as a celebration. And lastly, the fourth source also supported the fact that sugar skulls are used to represent death in a positive way instead of a negative. Thank you.